My name is Joe Polish. I am the one of the co-founders of ilovemarketing.com. I do it with Dean Jackson, who is based in Florida half the year and Toronto the other half of the year. And this guy sitting next to me is Mr. Dan Sullivan. Dan is the founder of a Strategic Coach, and Babs, his partner and wife, she runs the company. She's in control, Dan's in charge. Something like that. Sort of.
We won't argue over that.
And if you do, how many of you have heard of Dan Sullivan before? Okay, I just figured this out with Dean the other day. We were actually recording some episodes live together in Atlanta. And I said, we have mentioned Dan Sullivan, our strategic coach, on every single episode of I Love Marketing. And the reason being is Dan is truly the smartest human being I know. From my perspective of what I consider smart and brilliant and successful, I would say this guy. And what I mean by that is you'll hear him say things that, at least I do, when I listen to Dan. He says things that I don't really quite hear anyone else talk about. Strategic Coach is the highest level coaching program in the world for successful entrepreneurs. So this is a man who has coached more successful entrepreneurs more than anyone else in the world. Close to how many years now?
37.
37 years. So he's had more discussions with successful entrepreneurs than anyone. And some of the most successful people I know are clients of Strategic Coach. Truly. And you're going to spend some of that time with him tonight. And he's offered to come by here and share some of his thoughts on. Actually, you can share whatever the heck you want to share, because it doesn't matter. What I asked him to talk about, though, is the power of discussions, because he has spent countless hours in discussion groups with people. And really, what we have here is we have a bunch of individuals with a bigger future of getting better at building and growing their entrepreneurial enterprises, multiplying their success, and doing it in the context of coming to tonight, my office, and having a discussion. And so I'd like Dan to actually speak to that. And so that's what I have to say for now. So for if I was to ask you to introduce who you are and what you do, how would you best describe that, Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. First of all, I always appreciate enormously the opportunity to be in a group that Joe creates. Joe's just got an amazing ability to create an environment where people can come and learn. And so I appreciate it. I'm here for the next 2 days with Joe's 25K group, and Joe recommends people into my group, and I recommend people into Joe's group. I want to be real specific tonight about what you are doing here. And first of all, I just want to point out something fairly significant, that I'm watching you sitting here tonight, and you come here to learn, and you're doing it at nighttime. It's past 5 o'clock. Most people don't work past 5 o'clock, and here you are tonight. And I was thinking of the contrast between you and the people occupying Wall Street and occupying Oakland, and they're bitching about somebody just loaned them $200,000 for an education, and they're really pissed off that somebody loaned them $200,000, but somebody's not giving them a lifetime job now. And it sort of brings it home to me that you're here because you want to create a future of your own, and you want to use your skills and use technology and use your ambition to actually create a future for yourself. And I think really, the program that Joe and Dean have put together is about marketing, but really what it's really about is creating the kind of future that you would really like to have for yourself. And it just happens to be that if you aren't born with a lot of capital, and you're not born with a lot of advantages, and you're not born with a lot of privileges, there's only one vehicle that can allow you to actually create the future that you want, and that's actually marketing. And marketing is the great equalizer on the planet. Doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what your background is. Marketing allows you to equalize the playing field.
Right.
Okay? And the thing about it, marketing is a multiplier, but then the other aspect about the multiplier is if you can get together with a group of like-minded people because each of you is going to come at this from a different direction. Each of you has a past that's different. Each of you has unique abilities that are very different. How you organize your thoughts, how you present your thoughts, how you capture the attention of someone out in the marketplace. And you can sit here and already just from your sharing, I know there's people who are going to want to come and talk to you how you did it and who's Phil Tyrone anyway, and how did you line it up. So immediately just by you sharing, there's probably a lot of people who already have different ideas about how they're going to approach their thing. And that's, you just did the number one thing that you have to do to start a great discussion group, and that is you have to share a successful experience, or you have to share an unsuccessful experience in such a way that other people can ask you questions about it. And that's really the start off of any learning. It always starts with someone actually sharing a personal experience. And the reason is that people are intensely interested in people. And everybody wants to know how other people are approaching the future to make it bigger for themselves. So I've been in discussion groups of one kind or another probably for the last 45 years. And I have to tell you a little story. So I went to a college. The only reason I graduated from college is because I went to a very special college. I'm a Ohio farm boy. Didn't have any money, went off to Washington, D.C. I worked nights. I went through 2 years of university, got real tired, dropped out, did a outward bound program in Great Britain, came back, was going to go back to college, and Vietnam started and I got drafted. So I spent 2 years in South Korea in the Army, came back, and I had the GI Bill, and I borrowed the rest of the money, and I went to this interesting college outside Washington, D.C. It's called St. John's. And all you do at St. John's is read and talk about the great books of the Western world, Plato right up to Einstein. And it's all talking. It's all just like this. It's just like a room just like this. And so I went through the 4 years, read all the books. The reason I went to the college is because I wanted to read the books, and I would never do it on my own. So somebody organized it for me, and so I went. But the whole thing is that there was very little writing. It was just sitting around and reading the books and talking about it. And you got really skillful about talking about ideas. 4 years there, you really get kind of skillful of how to talk about ideas and how to talk about how other people's approaches to the ideas. So I came out of there and I went right into advertising. I was a writer with BBDO, one of the big agencies, and then in '74 I kicked off the strategic coach. And ever since then, this college has been hitting me up for money. And their pitch is that because they've given me this invaluable gift, that for the rest of my life I'm indebted to them for the 4 years that I borrowed the equivalent of $60,000 to go to, and that I should be in their debt. And I was trying to think, is there a set of thoughts that I could have right now that would free me up from them? And so I began thinking, what did I really get out of St. John's? So I read all the books, and then it came to me that they had a trick at St. John's, that they had actually created a structure around how you talk about the great books. And it consists of 5 parts. And the first one is, to have a great discussion, you have to have great ideas. You can't have a great discussion about lousy ideas. You have to have an idea that really, really fascinates people. Well, Babs and I, on our way to the office and our way home for the office for the past, what is it, a year now, Joe, that you and Dean have been doing it? Or
Yeah.
Less than 3/4 of a year?
Yeah, almost a year, coming up about
almost
a month and a half.
Almost a year. And we just sit there, we're driving to the office, we're driving back, and we're listening to I Love Marketing. And I have to tell you, I've been around marketing and advertising and selling my whole life, and I don't think in one organized package there's greater wisdom, greater insight, more usable suggestions on how to market anywhere in the world that would even compare to I Love Marketing. Two of the brightest people I've ever met in the area of marketing, and it's not theory, this stuff just works. I mean, if you just do what they tell you to do, it works. And, which to me, I mean, you could go to Harvard and study marketing for 4 years, and what you would get is some of the top theories in the world about marketing. Or you could listen to I Love Marketing, and you actually, you can skip the tuition. You can skip the tuition. This is just the greatest marketing stuff in the world. And both Dean and they're very open about the fact of who they've learned from, like Dan Kennedy and all the other great people that you've learned from. So they're very open. Nobody invented the sun, we inherited it from other people. So, but these are great ideas. So if you're going to have a great discussion about I Love Marketing, you got to start with the actual ideas that are in the program. So on an ongoing basis, there's ideas in every single module, every single podcast. But what they've done is that they've actually summed it up there. And this is a phenomenal structure that Dean and Joe have actually created. And there's another structure that goes along with this. And if you think of a matrix, so there's one side of the matrix that has the 8 profit activators coming down the side. And there's another matrix that goes across the top, and that's before, during, and after. So basically you've got the equivalent of 24 ideas. Okay, you've got each of the 8 things before, each of the 8 things during, and each of the 8 things, because each of these. So right off the bat, you've got the potential for 24 great ideas to actually talk about. And the other thing that you really, really need to do is that before you come into a group, people really have to be informed. And that is that you shouldn't really let anybody into a discussion group on I Love Marketing unless they have special dispensation, like the people in the back of the room, unless they've actually listened to the stuff. Because unless they've listened to the stuff, then they're not informed, and they're going to want to make up for their lack of knowledge by talking. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever noticed that people who are really ignorant want to talk over so people can't really understand? So one of the things that I think, because these are happening all over the world. The group like tonight these are happening all over the world, and the more that people listen to this, more groups are going to be formed. And what I just have to feel is, number one, you have to have great ideas. Number two, the people who are coming into the group have to be informed about the ideas. Okay, it's not fair to the other people in the group to come into a discussion group and not having read the material, because is it in transcript form?
Oh yeah,
it's in transcript form, and it's also in audio form, so that you're fully engaged in the material. So that's number one, is the ideas. Number two is that you have great questions. And one of the things I would recommend, Joe, as you develop this, is that you take each of the modules and you break it down to 3 key questions. So right off the bat, you have about 120, 130 questions, okay? And what I would do is that I would have those questions as a mystery pack, so that when you have a discussion group, you put the questions so that people don't see the questions and they pick them out at random. And a question gets thrown out to the group so that people are hitting it cold. Because nobody thinks more clearly except when they've been hit with a question that they didn't know was coming. Your brain really speeds up when you're hit. If you have a question and you have a lot of time to prepare for it and think it through, you don't think as clearly, and you don't give as good an answer as if you're just hit with it. So one of the things in doing the discussion, you've got all these ideas, but what you want to do is break the questions down into really good ideas. So number two is really good ideas, and then you have to have a really good discussion. And really good discussion means that everybody participates in the discussion. It's not really great if you have like 20 or 20. I mean, this is a big group. here tonight, but I would break in a discussion group, or I would break it down into modules. This whole room, I wouldn't have it entirely just as a whole group. I would break it down into groups of 4, groups of 8, and then everybody gets a chance to talk, and everybody gets a chance to talk about the experience, talk about the questions, what the question means to you, what's your answer to the question, and then you're able to generate a lot of excitement. And then maybe if you broke this room down into what do we have, 40 people here tonight?
How many are here?
I think about 45.
45. So break it down to 6, 7 groups, and then everybody gets up and they sort of talk about what their group came up with. The big thing here, and what we're discovering, the secret to the universe on the planet, on this planet right here, because we now have the electronic communication capabilities to do that. The key to human progress is distributed intelligence. And what distributed intelligence is everybody's intelligent about something. Everybody's uniquely creative about something. And the more intelligence you can get involved in a discussion, the better. Babs and I have a discussion group in Toronto that we've been running. It'll be 10 years, in about 3 months it'll be 10 years. And these are about 20 of my strategic coach clients. And we have this really neat process, and this is how it works, is that throughout the quarter, up to a particular date, all our clients are looking online, they're reading newspapers, they're reading magazines. And what they do is they'll clip magazines and they'll send them through to us, articles. It has to be an article, can't be too long, but it's on something that they think the other people in the group would be really interested in. And then we take these articles and we pick 30 of them and we form them into a booklet. So we format them as 8.5 by 11, and we Surlox bound them, and we send out a article book, and it's it usually ends up being about 100 pages. And then everybody reads all the articles, and then we come together, and we do this every quarter. We've done this every quarter for 10 years. It can be about anything. The articles it can be about anything in the world that interests that people think that someone else in the group would be interested. But the first thing we do is we have a go-around where everybody gets to have a say. You can only keep a discussion group going if everybody gets a say. If people go and there's somebody who dominates the conversation, it falls apart. Life works that way too. How many of you have noticed that? If there's just one person talking all the time, pretty soon there's no audience. So so it's to allow people to express how they responded to a particular idea. So that creates a great discussion, and if everybody has this feeling, a couple feelings, look, I got to express what I thought were really, really great articles, but then you sit there and you listen, and we also read a book every quarter. And I read a book and I think I've got it nailed. I know what this book is all about. And then we go around in a group and there's 19 other viewpoints on this book. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. And what it shows you is that every human intelligence is really, really unique. And they have a totally different take on things. And as you're sitting there, I have my take, but I just got enriched by 19 other takes on the same book, so that my awareness of what this book, all the different dimensions of the book, really mean are just incredibly enhanced. Okay, Joe does this because Joe is a phenomenal networker, so Joe's brain is always being informed by about 50 or 60 other genius intelligences in the world. He's always asking, always talking. And from a standpoint of really learning a subject like marketing, what you're doing, nobody's the expert on this, I have to tell you. I've got a saying in my, Joe always calls me the most intelligent person in the world that he knows, but Joe just hasn't met very many people. But,
well, in the area that I like, which is entrepreneurial intelligence, you would be right up there.
But I have a rule. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I just want to be in a room where everybody's getting smarter. See, and the way everybody gets smarter is by you allow people to really engage with the really great ideas, respond to really great questions, and then you have a really great discussion in which everybody really, really gets to talk about what the idea and the question really meant to them. Okay, so that now we've covered 3. So we've got great ideas, we've got great questions, we've got a great discussion. Now here's the thing that's really, really crucial. You got to have somebody who's a great facilitator. There has to be a leader. You can't just have a discussion and expect that orderly democracy is going to break out. It just is not going to happen. Somebody's going to dominate the group unless you have a facilitator, and there have to be certain rules, and one of the rules is everybody gets a say. But the other thing is you stick with the idea and you stick with the question that you started with. There have to be some rules. There's going to be another discussion group next time. Other people can work at it, but there's a sense of order that actually instills itself, but you have to have a facilitator. The other, so that's number 4, you have to have a great facilitator, and people become great facilitators just by following certain rules, and I've just laid out some of the rules. You know, you have to have an idea, you have to have a question, everybody has to get a say. That's all the facilitator really has to do, is make sure that those ground rules are really observed. And then the 5th one, you have to record the 4 or 5 really great things that came out of each meeting. And then when you start the next meeting, go back over the 4 or 5 things that were discussed in that meeting, because then there's a sense of growth. You know, you got a sense that you're making real progress here, and people will start referring to frequent back meetings, and so there's a history and a depth to the whole experience. Now, going back to my St. John's experience. So the reason I felt really good coming up with these 5 things is because it kind of told me that's what I got out of St. John's. I cracked their code. I know how their code works. But guess what? You can apply those 5 things to anything in the world. So they applied them to the great books, and that was great. And most of them are, by the way, really boring. They're really long, and they don't at all relate to your marketing plans. You know, so what I feel is, because you're all intensely interested in marketing, you're entrepreneurial, that the ideas that Joe and Dean have put together are the kind of ideas which, as you master them, will just get better and better. Like those 8 rules, you can live your lifetime out of. You know, I mean, when you're all in this room sitting here and making 50 times more than you're making right now, those rules will mean even more to you than they do tonight. You know, there's just a power to what they put there, and so that's how you hold a discussion group. Now, we're talking about I Love Marketing group, but how many of you have great ideas that you could create you know, I'm looking at Kathy there. Kathy has this fabulous company called Z Health, and they have some phenomenal ideas about how the brain affects your body. These are cutting edge ideas about, and things that we've just discovered about the brain and how it affects the body and how you can heal the body and how you can fix the body just by working with your eyes and working with your inner ear. Babs and I are clients of Z Health. Well, there's some phenomenal ideas, so you could create a whole discussion group around that. There's not a thing in the world that you can't form a discussion group around. You know, I mean, Kevin, you've got some of the greatest ideas in the world about webinars, you know, and how you put on webinars, and what's the whole technology and science of webinars. You know, Joseph Janicek, who, Joseph's been in, Joe is one of the most brilliant people in the world about, wealth creation, preserving wealth, creating a future based on wealth. You know, I mean, every year there's a magazine that puts out the top 100 financial wealth advisors in the United States, and Joseph's always right there in that magazine. You know, so Joseph could create a discussion group around really great ideas in the area of wealth creation and wealth preservation, and he could create a group. And the neat thing about it is that, Joe, are you dumber or smarter since you started I Love Marketing about marketing?
I'm quite a bit smarter, but it's...
Yeah, I mean, when you had to, you've got 44 hours that you and Dean have put together, And I bet every one that you do, you discover things about what you know about marketing that you didn't know before.
Absolutely, because this is an area where when I first learned it, I thought early on after I read a couple of books and I thought I really had direct response down. I actually thought I was much smarter then than actually. Like today, I realize it's such an expansive subject matter. There's always new things. There's always nuances. There's always different applications of it. So, and one of the things that you can learn through the School of Hard Knocks. You can learn through the experiences of others, which is a much smarter, more effective way to learn. Or you can even accelerate your learning by teaching and sharing it with other people. So doing this, one of the big payoffs in doing the I Love Marketing podcast is it's just a great vehicle to not only distribute great ideas out into the world, but my God, what it does for my education is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been in 25K groups. This is the group that we're in. And people have walked in with a marketing idea and Joe's mouth just popped open, because he hadn't heard that one before. I remember when John Benson brought in the video sales letter, which, that was a phenomenal breakthrough in marketing when John created that. And whoa, there's always stuff that smart people out there are coming up with, which are total surprise to all the other smart people in the world. And so if you create a format and a venue where that intelligence can emerge and where people can come up with ideas, and it's all experimentation. None of us have human nature cracked. None of us have how human beings respond down pat. We don't all know that. Human beings are always surprising us with what they want, how they respond to things, and it changes. It changes from quarter to quarter, it changes from season to season. So this is a vast area of discovery, but if you create an intellectual structure, one of the most important things that you have to have in life, regardless of what area of life you're dealing with, you have to have an intellectual structure that actually allows you to sort out your experience when it happens, so that if you master this intellectual structure that Dean and Joe have created, then all the experiences that you're having when you're actually experimenting with marketing and you're going out there and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work, you have a box to put it in. Was it before the sale? Was it during the sale? Was it after the sale? Which profit activator was it? And all of a sudden, your own experience starts to become extraordinarily meaningful because you have this intellectual structure. So I can see, as you guys continue with the podcast, but these discussion groups start, there's going to be this incredible intelligence that's actually going to form, and there's going to be people out in these discussion groups who are going to come forward, and they've got a slant on things that you've never seen before, you and Dean have never seen before, and they're going to come up with connections that the two of you never made before, but you gave them the intellectual structure so they could have their experiences and actually create the connections.
Yeah, it's a fascinating opportunity, and it's something that I love doing. And also, one of the things that me and Dean really want to do is, for lack of a better word, rebrand the way that people think of marketing, because marketing is not respected anywhere near the level that I feel it could and should be. And the biggest obstacle, because there's a lot of obstacles to why people don't get success with marketing. And one of the biggest is they simply don't place enough value on it. They don't quite understand that it doesn't matter how good your product or service is or what it does until somebody buys it. And that there's no relationship, between being good at what you do and getting paid for what you do. The getting paid for what you do is called marketing. And marketing is way beyond just selling something. Everybody markets it. Anyone that's ever gotten a date, you did some sort of marketing. Anyone that's ever gotten anything, all day long, people are marketing. They're positioning themselves. They are presenting themselves. They are persuading or they're repelling people. And because part of marketing is repelling. So part of it, though, is you want the repelling to be your choice, not because you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Conscious repelling.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So and one thing I like is, thank you very much. And what I'd love to have you speak to, because everyone here in the room, I would consider being in an entrepreneurial results economy. Dan talks about there's the time and effort economy, and then there's the results economy. I'd love to get your perspective on what is an entrepreneur. Where did the origination of the term entrepreneur from John Baptiste Say and all that. I'd love to have you speak to what is an entrepreneur. What do they actually do?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because this is my life, and I personally coach 6,000 entrepreneurs, 60 different industries all over the world, from youngest around age 22, the oldest is now 83. And so men, women, shy, loud, outrageous, all of them ADD. Sort of. Anyway, what was I saying?
Squirrels.
So anyway, but the original definition, and this is the earliest definition we have, is 1804, and an entrepreneur is someone who takes resources from a lower level of productivity to a higher level of productivity. And that's it. So what kind of resource? Any kind of resource. So anybody who takes a resource from here to here through whatever means is an entrepreneur. A bureaucrat is someone who takes a resource from a higher level of productivity to a lower. So in order to have a lot of entrepreneurs, you have to have a lot of bureaucrats. Anyway, but the essential is that you make things more valuable, you make things more useful, you make things faster, you make things easier, you make things cheaper, you make things bigger. Okay, so that's really the whole essence of an entrepreneur. But the number one thing you have to do is that every entrepreneur, for the most part, like all the people that I have, when they come into the program, they're already successful by the standards of the world. But the vast majority of them got there because they were great salespeople. That it's actually the fact that they were a great salesperson that gave them the confidence to go out and be an entrepreneur in the first place. They knew if they were in front of somebody, they could actually get a check. And not everybody can do that. That's not given to everybody, that they have the confidence and the ability to actually be in front of someone and get that person to write them a check. It's actually quite a fairly small percentage of the human race that actually has the confidence and the ability to actually do that. But what it requires is your presence. So you're limited that unless you can actually be present in front of people to actually sell, then you will become successful. You can become a very good salesperson. You can make a lot of money with sales, but you're limited because you can't multiply yourself. And what the equation is that allows you to multiply yourself is marketing. Okay? Because marketing is everything that happens that doesn't require your presence, but is still making a sale. Okay, and so that's the real distinction here. So a lot of the entrepreneurs that I have in the program make well over $1 million, $2 million, $3 million personal income, but they're still trapped because there isn't any. They are the brand, and there's nothing bigger than them. There's nothing that actually is bigger than them. So when they're not there, nothing happens. And what they're seeing now, because of the amazing breakthroughs in technology and what we can do to get the message out to the world night and day to many, many strangers, and preconditioning the marketplace to be very favorably disposed towards your value creation proposition, your message. We have this amazing explosion now of marketing capabilities, so that a single individual with a bright idea and just a desire to create some sort of result of it in the world can actually, with a very small company, actually become a very, very large marketing entity out in the marketplace. These are two guys who get on the phone, and basically they've created a worldwide movement called I Love Marketing. Well, you couldn't do that 20 years ago. You couldn't do it 10 years ago. The technological means were not there to multiply themselves. So you're hitting this. I notice that a lot of you are not as old as I am. And the beautiful thing about this age right now is that you're hitting the sweet spot in history right now for individuals being able to multiply themselves. But you have to have an intellectual structure for doing it. You can't just go out there willy-nilly. There has to be a process. There has to be a structure. So that's really what I'm seeing now, and that's all pure entrepreneurism, what we're talking about here. And I'm quite a student of history, and a lot of people who know me know that I really love history, and I draw tremendous lessons from history. But what I feel right now in the United States, I live in Canada, by the way. I'm from the States, but I live in Canada. I've lived there for 40 years with Babs. And it's actually interesting living in another country for more than half your life that isn't too far away from the United States, because you get to appreciate that the United States is really crazy. It's really a crazy country, you know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that everybody's always coming up with something new that's going to disrupt everybody else. There's a real disruptive quality about American culture. And I think it has a lot to do with the marketers, but more than that, I think it has a lot to do with the consumers. I think the reason why the United States is the #1 economy in the world, and by the way, always will be, all this talk about China and everything like that, it's very interesting to sell newspapers, but it ain't going to happen. If you go outside of somebody's capital city and they're still shitting in a hole, they're not competition.
Get that one?
I like that. You got that video working
the next
well.
one.
Yeah. And all you have to do is check the migration patterns, and when there's more Americans moving to China than there are Chinese moving to the United States, then you'll know that China's the #1 country. But the flow is strictly in one direction. They all want to come here. Why do they all want to come here if their country owns the future? Okay, but here's what I think is happening in the United States. I think we're in a civil war right now. Okay, and this is our 5th civil war. Okay, the first one was the revolution itself, which was actually a civil war between those who wanted to stay with England and those who didn't. And it was a civil war. And all the bitterness and the polarization and the meanness that we're noticing in the media, how people are attacking everybody else, what we're doing today would not even compare with what they did to each other back then. They were really nasty back then. Okay, so that was the first Civil War. The second Civil War actually happened in 1828, and it was actually Andrew Jackson. And they don't talk a lot about Andrew Jackson, but he was one of the greatest presidents of the United States, because what had happened in 1803 is that Thomas Jefferson, who was president at the time, bought the Louisiana Purchase. He purchased Louisiana. It was called the Louisiana Territory. And he purchased that from France for, in today's dollars, the equivalent of 50 cents an acre. Greatest real estate deal in the history of 15 states. He bought 15 states at 50 cents an acre. That's in today's dollars. That's in, that's the thing. Just the greatest. I don't care. That just goes down. It's a great real estate deal. But what it did is, in a very few years, it meant that the country could go all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And what happened was, after the Revolutionary War, you had the original 13 states, and they were kind of like a clique, and they were going to say, well, we're kind of going to run the country. And Jackson came along and said, no, we're going to go right to the Pacific, and we're going to have a lot more states than 13. And by the way, we want to break the power of you guys and go to the state. So that was the second Civil War. The third one was what we actually called the Civil War. or what my clients from Mississippi called the War of Northern Aggression. So that was the third one. And then the fourth one happened in the 1930s with the New Deal and the Depression. And what it meant was that now government took over a very central role in society. And we never had that amount of government before, and government began organizing everything from the inside. And that's gone on for 80 years now, and it's long past its usefulness. So we've gotten to a point now where government is just costing way too much, isn't creating very much value, is taking resources from a higher level of productivity down to a lower level of productivity. But meanwhile, starting in the 70s with the microchip, and then the great revolution in the 1980s with Jobs and Microsoft and Oracle and all the guys who put together the microchip revolution, you have the possibility of a total entrepreneurial revolution. But what's happening now is that you have a war between what I call the government class and the entrepreneurial class. And 2012 is going to be like Gettysburg. This is going to be the big battle. So a year from now, it's actually a year yesterday. That's going to be it. And my conclusion, that's going to be an overwhelming win for the entrepreneurial class. And there's going to be a huge breakout in 2013. Enormous amount of energy is going to be restored to the economy. There's going to be a tremendous amount of confidence restored. And things are really going to bust out. But you have to have kind of your head in the right place, and you have to have your act in order to take advantage of it. So this is the fifth Civil War, and we're just coming to the, we're just coming up to it. So I'm just training, I'm getting all my entrepreneurs ready for it. I said, there's a big bust out coming, and there's going to be tremendous gains. So right now, you're kind of training with weights. Everybody's kind of doing their training, and it's harder right now. I've had swift currents, and I've had currents working against me, and this is you got a current coming against you in today's world. But if you just keep getting smarter and more capable right now, then when the breakout comes, you're just going to zoom ahead. And the internet and marketing and the whole concepts of marketing, the people who have this down pat are just going to be the winners in this new revolution. So, I don't know, does that make you feel better? How many of you feel better? Yeah, I believe this in my soul. I've been at this. I started coaching in 1974, and I've spent roughly about 40,000 hours in discussions with entrepreneurs about what works and what doesn't work. And so I truly believe that if you're just starting out right now, you could not start out with a finer way of getting your head really filled with the right ideas and the right techniques than what Joe and Dean, this is a real gift to the world. Yeah, it's a real gift to the world.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm really glad we got all that on video. Since you are here, I want to take an opportunity to ask you a couple of questions that are more bigger picture thinking. And how would you? What is capitalism? Because there's a lot of anti-capitalistic people that every entrepreneur here encounters on a daily basis. It gets distorted. People like parasites like Michael Moore, pervert the whole term.
I hate those guys.
Yeah. What is capitalism, and why does it get attacked?
Well, it's really interesting, and actually what you do for a living is the perfect example of capitalism. That what capitalism is actually an ever-increasing system of greater cooperation among strangers. It's an ever-increasing system of greater cooperation among strangers. Okay, so think about internet marketing, how much that's an ever-increasing system of greater cooperation among strangers. It's pure capitalism. What you guys are into is just pure capitalism. Okay. The reason why capitalism has a bad name is because it was named by its enemies. Capitalism actually isn't about capital, it's about cooperation. Okay. Give you an example. What's your name, by the way?
Patrick.
Patrick. Anyway, except the Irish, there's no cooperation among the Irish. You're not Irish, are you? No. You've heard about Irish Alzheimer's?
No.
They forget everything except the grudges. Anyway, any Irish people here? Well, now you have a grudge. I would have something about a grudge. My name's Sullivan, Daniel Sullivan, so there's some Irish there. So here's the thing. Just kind of look at what you did the other day. So first of all, it was cooperation between you and Philip.
Correct.
Okay. Were you strangers before that?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's two strangers get together. They create a product that goes way beyond both of them. You do it for your reasons. Phil does it for his reasons. But both of you now get a much bigger result because you cooperated. Okay. But now you post it on the, it's online, right?
Correct.
You put it online, and now it's going out to a whole bunch of other strangers, okay? One of them calls you up and immediately says, I don't like what the other guy's doing, I love what you're doing. He brings his, now you got another two more strangers cooperating with each other. You see, it's all strangers. You see, you can't grow the economy if you're only working with your friends.
Right.
Yeah, no, it isn't. And in most of the world, you can't do business with except people in your family or your friends. I mean, the entire Arab world, why it's sitting in the 16th century as far as economic development, is because you can't trust anyone outside of your own family. And the amazing thing about the United States is generally speaking, you'll take a risk on almost anybody. I mean, we will. I mean, it's an amazing, trusting company. But part of the reason is we've got a legal system that if you don't do what you say you're going to do, we're going to put your ass in jail. No, it is. There's recourse. There's recourse in there's recourse. There's consequences in the system, or you'll get blackballed. You'll just get a bad name. I mean, in the internet world, it's very easy to get blackballed if you don't live up to your promise and you're not trustworthy. Okay, you get a bad reputation, zip. I mean, Google will just eliminate you from the known universe. Yeah, if you don't do the right thing, and that's what you need. There have to be some real high penalties if you're living in a trust community, because if somebody breaks the trust, if they don't deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on, if they don't follow through, there's got to be some really severe consequences to do it. But the whole system is based on constantly expanding the system of increased cooperation among strangers. So if you think of building a list, that's what building a list is. Building a list is constantly adding to the number of strangers who you are getting to know and who know about you and know about your value, and then increasing the possibility and the ease with which they can cooperate with you. And do that. So that's capitalism.
That's great.
That's just
great.
Capitalism.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, let me. I've mentioned this many times, and over the years, I talk about difference between selling and marketing. And those of you that have never heard me say this, selling is what you do when you're on the phone or face to face with somebody. Marketing is what you do to get yourself on the phone or face to face with them, or on your website, however you want to position it. So that people are pre-interested, pre-motivated, pre-qualified, and predisposed to give you money. And so marketing is selling in advance. And if you do your marketing right, selling becomes easy and ideally unnecessary, because you have accomplished so much of the rapport building in an ELF manner, easy, lucrative, and fun, versus a half manner, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. So basically, like you were saying earlier, it doesn't even matter if someone's making millions of dollars. They're still limited if they're the guy or gal. And so no matter how great of a salesperson you are, you're limited by the clock. However, the first job of the entrepreneur is to go out and get checks. And if I had not had the ability to sell early on, which even I remember when I was a really actually I don't really remember it. I was just told this, but it was probably true. When I was a little kid, my father he was a locksmith, and he had a locksmith shop, and he used to prop me up on the counter, and I used to smile, and I was smiling all the time, and I was crying inside. But anyway, I would smile, and people would like come up and give me money. I mean, whatever. My sales pitch was just
It's still working.
Exactly. It's amazing how long you can drag this shit out.
It's the fundamental structure of your life. Why'd you take all those drugs? You had it down pat.
That is common. And then when I used to sell newspaper subscriptions door to door, I mean, I used to use a sympathy plea where it's like, I want to win a trip to Disneyland. And that. However, as I become an adult, I really, the fact is, making the sale one time, the transaction is one thing, but the relationship is far more important because there's more money to be made in relationships than there are in transactions. And so, people that don't respect selling and even see themselves as salespeople have a really difficult time transitioning into becoming a great marketer. So one of the first things that you need to know how to do is you need to sell. And so and Gary Halbert had this great way of breaking complexity down, as do you. And he said there's three things you need in order to sell. You need a product or service is the first thing. The second thing is you need a sales pitch. And the third thing is a delivery system. And what I learned is that most people in business, including myself before I actually learned direct response marketing, which is the type of marketing that I Love Marketing is all about. Direct response meaning instead of just getting your name out there, which is what brand building, image advertising, institutional advertising, most of the advertising and marketing they teach in college is about getting your name out there. Direct response is about getting your name out there and getting a response back. And so when I first started learning this, when Gary said, there's three things you need. You need a product or service, you need a sales pitch, and you need a delivery system. Most business owners focus on what it is they sell, their product or service, and how do we tell other people about it. Do we do that through the yellow pages? Do we do that through TV or radio? Do we do that through postcards, direct mail, the internet, social media, Twitter? I mean, mobile marketing, whatever. But if you have a lousy sales pitch or a lousy marketing message, you're just going to be delivering, not that effective of a message. And so part of great marketing is being able to tell the story, communicating it in a compelling manner. And no matter how many times I would tell people that, I would find people constantly having like this negative perspective of selling, like selling's a bad thing. And so one day I asked Dan, it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I said, Dan, what's your definition of selling? And he rattled off, Eunice, since you have the most beautiful handwriting on the planet, do you mind writing it up here for me? Eunice, my wonderful assistant of 16 years. Can you believe this?
Boss.
Yeah, my boss of, that was good. All right. Definition of selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. Getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. And so when I first heard that, I was like, wow, man, that is like really profound. This is a really important distinction. And I think about half of you here in the room probably are familiar with that and have heard me talk about it, but I got it from Dan. And the reason I wanted to bring it up here is because this definition actually changed my life, and it's changed the life of many of our clients when I allow them to actually discuss it and go deep with it. So those of you that have never heard this definition before, I'll move it over. Can we get this on video? Can you see it okay, or should I move it up to the front? I want to capture. The reason I'm doing this on video is I actually want the other Meetup groups to be able to maybe play this video. And basically, so definition of selling, getting someone intellectually engage in a future result that's good for them and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. What do you think are the most important words in this this definition? What are some?
Take action.
Emotionally take action. From the standpoint of doing ethical selling or ethical marketing, what are the most important words?
It's good for them.
Good for them, exactly. See, because if you say getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result, well, we see that all the time. McDonald's does a great job with Happy Meals, right? And you ever seen a beer commercial? The closest to reality you're ever going to see, good-looking people, all happy, no one's drooling on each other, right? You know, I mean, that shit looks like, you know, they'll show the next day when they're hungover and hammered and they slept with someone they probably shouldn't have slept, you know, stuff like that. But there's all kinds of marketing that is done to get someone intellectually, emotionally engaged in something destructive, like watch this pornography, smoke this cigarette, eat this crappy food, drink this soda, which is, i.e., liquid Satan, you know, things like that. Do we see one?
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I'm getting called out.
Uh-oh, all right, good. So what I started doing is I started like posing this question to people at some of my events, and I would ask them, you know, what are the most important words here? And I said, okay, so let's say, and again, all this came from Dan. I said, okay, so how many of you consider yourselves great salespeople? And I would do like a survey. So I'll do it right here. How many of you consider yourselves great salespeople? Okay. How many of you are no good at selling? You hate selling, you think you're ineffective at it. Okay. And there, thank you for even because there's more people that feel that way, but they're like, well, what's going to happen if I raise my hands? So how many of you sort of had that feeling? What would happen if I actually raised my hand? Like, how many of you are capable of being honest right now? Thank you. So, you know, Larry Steinmetz would always say...
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, you can.
Those of you who don't think you're a great salesperson, how many of you, if you've totally sold yourself on what it is that you want to sell, you're actually a good salesperson? Yeah. See, the first sale always has to be to yourself.
Yep.
If you're sold on it, completely sold on it, selling is actually kind of easy.
Yeah, me move it where? Over. Okay. All right. Mickey said. So basically, how many of you in the room have ever eaten at a restaurant, read a book, or gone to a movie, and you liked it so much that you told someone else about it, and they actually either ate at the restaurant, read a book, or went to the movies? Anyone ever had that experience?
Yeah.
Okay, so all of you, how many of you have an experience like that, like weekly? Right? Okay. Now, so everyone here is effective at selling. It's just a matter of your ability to persuade. Everything is selling. And so the bigger question is if you actually, how many of you have products or services, whatever it is that you sell, whatever your entrepreneurial endeavor is, how many of you have something that creates value for other human beings? Okay. And how many of you feel that you would be able to impact the world in great ways if only you were to engage intellectually and emotionally more people into that bigger future which involves your stuff? Okay. So what is the vehicle? How do you do that? Is it marketing and selling? That is the only vehicle. You can sit and, you know, you can read The Secret and you can wish and hope and dream and all that. You know, maybe to a certain degree, you know, intention and all that's good. But, you know, getting off your ass and actually communicating something. I went to a restaurant once and there was like a little sugar packet. And I don't know why, I have a weird brain. I remember certain things and many things I don't. And there was a sugar packet and it had a little caption that said advertising. And the quote was, he who has something to sell and whispers in a well is not as apt to make the shiny dollar as the guy who climbs a tree and hollers. And I thought, that's pretty cool. You know, because if you have something to share with the world, you have to get it out there. You got to put your message out there. And the way that you do that is you sell. And so part of it is first off, really having a true respect and appreciation for selling. And salespeople are looked down upon by bureaucrats and by corporations, and in many cases, people love to be sold, they hate to be pressured. And so people confuse, you know, manipulating somebody in a bad way with selling. how many of you have ever had a friend, be it a family member, someone that was in trouble or was going down a path that really wasn't all that good for them? It could have been behaviorally, it could have been buying something that you had a bad experience with, that you really stepped in and you started saying, talking to them, listening, doing whatever you needed to do in order to persuade them. How many of you have ever done that? Okay, so when you think of some of the greatest salespeople in the world, who comes to mind?
You.
Me.
Children.
Children, yep, exactly. Exactly. Is there any
You can never
individual?
say no to a child.
Name some individuals that you think of as, like, when you think of a salesperson, what's the first person that pops
Steve
in?
Jobs.
Steve
Steve
Jobs,
Jobs was
yeah.
probably one of the
St.
greatest.
Paul.
Jesus.
Say-
St. Paul. Jesus.
Jesus, yep.
Billy Mays.
Willie Mays.
Billy Mays.
Billy Mays. I thought so. Billy Mays.
He was great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Billy Mays.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney,
Yeah.
yep. Was Gandhi a great salesman?
Absolutely.
Mother Teresa?
Yep.
Martin Luther King?
Yep.
Clinton?
Yeah.
Okay. Now here's the thing. Was Hitler a great salesperson?
Yeah.
Yep. Now he got people intellectually engaged in a future result of murdering people. However, he was persuasive. So you see, it's not the selling or the marketing that's bad. It's the application of it. Marketing is like a gun. You can use it to go out and hunt for food, or you can use it to rob people. And unfortunately, people have a negative connotation towards it because everyone's had an experience where someone talked them into. It's like the used car salesperson sort of belief that someone has. You're going to walk onto a car lot and some shark's going to come after you. However, every great thing in life, every innovation would not exist if someone was not incentivized for selling it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the carpet, the shoes, the clothes, the lights, the internet, all of that exists because some salesperson out there, some entrepreneur, was taking resources from a lower level of productivity to a higher level. And my way of being entrepreneurial is actually making people more capable in the area of marketing so they're more effective at communicating, and therefore the way that I can impact the world is I just help people that already have great products and services to actually use more effective means of marketing and communicating it, and that's what I Love Marketing is all about. And more than anything, I would love to have everyone, even if it's just like 5%. If you had a 5% more appreciation for marketing, how much would that change your income? How much would that impact the way that, like, let's think about that. If you increased your marketing capabilities by 5%, just 5%, I'm not talking doubling, tripling, quadrupling, 5%, what do you think some of the benefits would be to your current business or your life right now? Anyone? What do you think?
More referrals.
What's that?
More referrals.
More referrals? Okay. What else would happen?
Better clients.
Better clients?
More
Yeah.
fun.
More fun, yeah.
Connect with more strangers.
Connect with more strangers?
More results, more cash.
Yeah, more cash. Yeah.
It'd be exponential. I mean, 5% in that would grow. in all
Compounded.
directions, Yeah.
It'd be compounded. Yeah.
Exactly. And so see, this will, marketing is not an event. Sales is not an event. It's a process. And just like learning, there's only so much that we can cover on one episode of I Love Marketing or one I Love Marketing meetup group. But if you make the whole process of developing your skills as a better marketer, things are going to continually get better and better and better, because it really is about consistency. And it's also about being committed to it. Can I ask you to talk about what you touched on? Can you stop that, please, Kevin? It's very hurtful of you to be doing that. What do you guys think of Kevin, by the way? Yeah, had it not been for Kevin, this I Love Marketing Phoenix meetup group would not be where it's at right now, and he is helping I don't know where the hell it'd be at right now. So what Dan was saying about the first sale you have to make is on yourself. Can you speak about that, to what that means? Because until someone sells themselves on the fact that they're a salesperson, they're not going to do well with this. And the people that I know that are not great marketers, they have this issue with marketing, like it's a bad thing. And until you can give them a mental enema and get them to understand, no, it's a great thing, they suck at marketing. So.
Well, first of all, I wanted that definition. Probably the greatest sales or marketing pitch that I can remember in my lifetime, because I was involved in advertising at a fairly high level back in the 70s. But Schaefer Beer, back in the 60s came out with this great line, which was Schaefer, the one beer to have when you're having more than one. And I thought it was the perfect, because there's total intellectual engagement and total emotional commitment in about five. I mean, they totally know their target market. How many of you feel they totally know their target market? The one beer to have when you're having more than one? I mean, how many of you, they've got it? So I grew up, as I said, I went to college near Annapolis. This has nothing to do with this question, by the way. There was a little brewery in Baltimore, and it was called Schmidt's Brewery. And it's too bad it didn't happen during the age of the internet, because they would have gone viral with us. But as good as Schaefer was, I thought Schmidt's really was better, because Schmidt's was the one beer to have when you're having more than 6. And I just think, that they really know their target market, emotionally. But what was your question?
No, I almost wanted to tell the Schlitz beer story. Maybe I will. We'll see if I have enough time. From selling yourself on it, because it's one thing to go out and persuade other people, but if you are not sold. See, the reason I think people dislike selling is they're like, I hate selling, because they feel like they're talking people into something that they're not committed to.
Yeah.
They don't even believe, and I would hate that too. If I was in a position where I had to go sell someone and lie for a living in order to make, who would like that? I mean, that's ridiculous. So
yeah, it's really interesting, because it really relates to the whole issue of entrepreneurism. And I've had a long span now. I'm going on 4 decades of dealing directly with entrepreneurs. And people are always asking me, what's the difference between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, and then really successful entrepreneurs and people who aren't really successful. And the more I go along, it's just that the really, really successful entrepreneurs have a phenomenal internal ability to sell themselves on everything they do before they do it. And other people don't. They just don't have an ability to sell themselves. And so and that's why they make such great salesperson, because before your name is?
John.
John, before I would approach John, I would sell myself on why I wanted to sell something to John. And what that means is that I freed up my mind completely now, just to kind of try to figure out what John really would like to have. And I'm not sitting there conflicted inside myself. Most people are trying to sell with an internal sense of conflict. I don't know if this is really good, what happens with this? And they've got all this conflict going on. So more and more, as I've gone along and tried to get better as an entrepreneur, I made rule number 1, I never sell unless I'm sold. Never sell unless I'm sold. No. And that has much wider applications just than being in marketing or being in selling. And we were talking yesterday, because Joe and I are starting a podcast of our own, which is called Genius Network, which will be up and on the iTunes. Is it iTunes pretty soon? But he asked me, what's contributing to the overwhelm that people are experiencing in modern life. There's a lot of overwhelm. People are just overwhelmed. It's just coming at people. And I said it's because they are over-obligated. And what over-obligated means is you keep giving promises to things that you're not sold on. So people say you're over-committed. No, the problem isn't that they're over-obligated and under-committed. So they're obligated to do things, but they're not actually committed to do the things that they're obligated to. And that creates an enormous mess inside your mind. How many of you have had that experience of being obligated to something that you were actually weren't committed to? It's kind of being the executor of someone's estate who you really hated during their lifetime. You get it. And so to make your life really simple, and this really contributes enormously to your ability to market and sell, is keep, and just have this rule: I'm not going to say a word, and I'm not going to try to sell anything that in my own mind I'm not completely sold on. and when you're completely sold, other people pick up on that. They just pick up on that. They just, oh, yeah, there's like, got it, totally sold. How many of you can tell when somebody else is totally sold on what they're doing? Yeah.
And you may not even be trying to sell, and it just happens.
Yeah, it just happens. We can just pick that up.
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to a group of my entrepreneurs, and I said, when Vince Lombardi, I mean, some of you were young in the group, so you may not remember who Vince Lombardi was, but when he took over a very, very bad football team, the Green Bay Packers, back in the late 50s, he walked in the locker room, and this is what he said, the first thing he said. He says, gentlemen, there's two things that are true. We're going to win a National Football League championship, and only half of you are going to be there when we do it. Which half are you in? And he was just totally sold. And so they picked it up in the first 15 minutes of being with him that he was totally sold. So when he was sold, they were sold.
Yeah, see, and it's kind of like this room. Like a year from now, there's going to be millions of dollars made. Half the group, and the others are going to be broke. Which half are you?
The other half are going to be buying.
You're going to listen to my
Half are
shit
gonna be
online or not?
Yeah, but when you see, and a lot of this really has to do with just a conversation that's going on with yourself. It's not really your conversation with the world, it's your conversation with yourself. Once the conversation with yourself is a really good one, then the conversation between you and the world is a really good one. Yeah.
That is great. Very good. This will kind of be like the lectures series of the I Love Marketing Meetup group, just because it's not often that Dan would be able to come and do this. We can take a few minutes if anyone has any specific questions for Dan about anything that this has opened your mind up to. Does anyone have a question for Dan about entrepreneurism, multiplying and growing your business? Yes, Kathy.
In the beginning, when you were talking about I get way back up there, about the 5 parts of a discussion and what make it effective and amazing, you mentioned the direction that it had to take. A lot of times discussions end up in tangents. Would you basically say those are not productive because what I got from what you said is that discussions should have, in essence, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a point to them that we can bring back and start again and to build on. You kind of kept tangents out of that and said shouldn't go that way, or I would consider it exclusive to what you said.
Yeah.
That's not quite a good question.
No, it's a great question.
No, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Only
No.
stupid people that ask questions.
That's not Kathy.
I'm just kidding. It's nothing to that.
I'm just thinking because I hadn't thought about the question before, so I'm thinking through the question. I think that there has to be kind of an agreement at the beginning of the meeting on what's going to be talked about, because you can't necessarily talk about everything. Okay, and that's why I think that if you have a great idea, there's just enormous dimensions to a great idea, and people can join their experiences. So I would draw a distinction between tangents and dimensions.
Okay.
That people can add a lot from different dimensions to a central focus, and the questions and do it. But everybody gets a sense that something in the center is being strengthened.
Okay.
And when it's tangents, everybody gets a sense that something in the center is being weakened.
Okay.
And you get better at that. You get better at that. And, it's, and there's a looping back, and that's part of the role of having the leader of the discussion. Let's just loop back now. You said this, and you said this, and how does it relate back to what we were talking about at the beginning? And then everybody's back to the center again. And that's why you need a good facilitator. Yeah.
We'll do 2 more questions, so just 2. Let's go, Billy in the back.
On the selling that I'm told on being the seller, how do I increase my skill level other than just practicing, selling myself? Is there like book studies or books out there that I can read and study and grow this capability within myself?
Well, I actually have a process that I go through for myself, which I'd be happy to share, of how I sell myself. Like, for example, and I do this about 20 times a week. Anything important that I'm going into, an important meeting, if I'm recording something, I do workshops, so I do all-day workshops, speeches, anything that I do, I go through this thinking process, and I'd be happy to share it. I'm not sure that. Well, you'll decide whether it's valuable or not. Anyway, but the first thing is, what's the purpose? Why am I doing this? And purpose is always the why. Why am I doing this? And I write it down. So this is a process that I always write down on a sheet of paper. What's the purpose of what I'm doing here? And what the purpose is, what am I trying to accomplish? If I go into a meeting, what am I trying to accomplish in the meeting? If I'm doing a sales call, what am I trying to accomplish on the sales call? Second thing is, what is the importance? What difference will it make, this event? Third thing is, what's the ideal outcome? And that goes back to your intellectually engaging yourself with a future desirable result that's good for you. Okay, so a lot of people go in not really clear what they want to get out of it, and well, let's just see what happens. Well, guess what? Anything can happen. I just want to have happen what I want to have happen. And then here's two things which are really interesting, and I think this may be the two most important parts. And this takes about a half hour, by the way. This thinking process, by the time you think it through, takes about a half hour. And the tool we call in Strategic Coach is called the impact filter. What kind of impact are you really looking for? But the next two questions are really, for me, the most interesting one. And what's the worst that can happen if I really blow it? If I really blow this situation, what's the worst that can happen? And the reason is that I believe that there are two things necessary for great performance. One of them is fear, and the other one is excitement. And when you actually tell yourself what it would look like if you blow it, you scare yourself. And I think it's very important for high performance in any situation to scare yourself that if you don't pull this off, there's consequences, and I always tell myself, if I blow this is horrible. And then the other thing, what's the best that can happen if I do the best job ever? What happens if I do the best job ever here? And then I'm very excited about that. So I've got two grades of fuel in my gas tank. I've got fear and I've got excitement, and that's enough that you really get great combustion out of fear and excitement. Okay, really exposed. And now my attention is totally there, but the other thing, now I've moved down to emotional commitment. Okay, so the first three things, the purpose, the importance, and the ideal outcome, is intellectual engagement. I'm totally engaged with the result. But now when I move down to what's the worst that can happen, what's the best can happen, now I'm operating on the level of emotion. And I'll enter into situations where people will say, could you do this? And I'll get halfway down, and by the time I get to ideal outcome, I say, it's not worth doing. So it saves me going into the situation. I've unsold myself. And I unsell myself from a lot of situations. I say, nah, it's not worth it. It's just not worth the bother. And that's where all your wisdom comes to the front. You see, you have a massive amount of experience about what's worked and what hasn't worked in your past life. But what's happened is that you don't always remember it when you're making a decision. And what this exercise does, it brings the full weight of all the wisdom that you've had in your life right to, and you say, oh, I'm not getting involved in that. Out of here. Then the final thing is, what is the success criteria? If this is really a success, what has to be true? This has to be true, this has to be true, and those are all measurables. They have to be measurables You know, I make a sale for $5,000. I make a sale for $9,000. You know, I do this, I do this, I do this, and then what you're doing is you're creating a measuring stick in your mind that that when you hit success, you'll know it. You know, there's actually a measurement in your mind. Human brain loves measurement, and there's two ways that the human brain measures. It's either a number attached to it. Human brain loves numbers, or it's an event that either happened or it did not happen. Sale either happened or sale did not happen. And the human brain just loves situations where there's numbers or events because it's measurable. And when it happens, you know it's happened. If it didn't happen, you know it didn't happen. So that's what I do. Is Billy, is it?
Yes.
Billy, so that's what I do. Now, that seems like a lot of work, doesn't it?
Well, if it improves it, I'm willing to try.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, that's really an important thing that you said, because there's a lot of smart people that I've taught this to that say, you know, I can do it without going through the process. And I teach this stuff, and I've taught it over the years, and I always do it. Okay, and I'm ADD, you know, and I don't like forms, and I don't like, doing that sort of thing, but it protects me so much, and the results are always so good.
Yeah.
That I just always do it. You know, it's like if you want to be physically fit, you have to go to the gym and you have to go through the routine. You know, you may not like to do it, but you can't do it any other way. And this really protects me. And I'll tell you, there's two great payoffs. One is that, generally speaking, when you go through this process, the results that you actually get as a result of this are either as good or better than you've actually put down. Or you'll say no to the situation and save yourself an enormous amount of time and aggravation. And I have people that said that it's as much valuable for the things that I don't get into as for the things that I pull up. You know, how many of you in your life that if you had done this in a half hour before you got involved in certain relationships and you didn't get it, it would have saved you a lot of bother, maybe a lot of money. Maybe a lot of money. So it seems like fairly simple stuff, but the life that we live in the 21st century, the main problem is over choice. We have too much choice. There's too many things that we can get into. So one of the great abilities that we really have to develop is the ability to discriminate between just what we want to do and everything else that we don't want to do. And that has an enormous amount to do with who you sell to and why you're selling to them, you know, and who you want to get involved with. You know, a lot of you have customers that are actually costing you money. How many of you have customers that are actually costing you money? Yeah. So after a while, you have to make a discrimination. You know, I just can't have this kind of customer. I need a better customer.
Yeah, it's really like if everyone even went through that process every time they're going to get on some social media site, would they really, you know, I mean, what is the impact? What are you looking for? And to show you a little bit of what, you know, Dan calls front stage and backstage, you know, little backstage thing, I did.
See, Joe did one of these before tonight's session. This is what it actually looks like.
Yeah, so me and Kevin were eating a couple hours before this meeting started. So we called this the I Love Marketing Meetup group for tonight. The purpose, continue education of I Love Marketing and instill the power of the mastermind. Importance, if Dan does a great speech on the value of I Love Marketing and in-person discussions, we can have this viewed all over the world. Ideal outcome, happy group, great, you guys happy?
Yes.
Great discussions, they get to hear the brilliance of Dan Sullivan, and we have a powerful video to use on I Love Marketing and in the leaders' meetup groups. Worst result if we don't take action. We do a mediocre meeting and don't capture the video properly. If you do take action, the people attending realize how lucky they are to have this free training and they want to tell everyone about it. Successful criteria. Leave them in awe of the power of the group. Does anyone feel that way?
Yeah.
Okay, good. 30 to 45 minute killer video at Dan. sell whatever we can to the group. That means pitch you guys something. And so what I meant by sell meaning getting all of you intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for you, and then getting you to emotionally, and in this case financially, commit to take action to achieve that. And so we have a couple of items of Dan's that I think would be so beneficial to all of you. So I have some things that I've gotten here from Strategic Coach, and so I'll talk about those as we end. And then in spite of it being beyond capacity, meaning the amount of people that were registered, we make it work, which it seems we have. And the video quality is very good. Kevin wrote, people are engaged to download the podcast and share ilovemarketing.com. A couple of people share their experience from what they learned. And Dan Sullivan sees the power of the I Love Marketing Meetup group, because Dan already has experienced I Love Marketing. This is the first time Dan's actually participated at an I Love Marketing Meetup group. So just by doing that thinking, how long do you think it took us to do this?
Maybe 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yeah. But what it does, and so what Dan just went through that process, I did that before my, how many of you, has anyone seen my speech at Glazer Kennedy? How many of you are Dan Kennedy fans? Anyone? You saw my speech, yeah. That was the highest close in Glazer Kennedy history, and I did a impact filter, and I went through this whole process right before that. And as a result of doing that speech, then because of that, it turned into Dean Graziosi doing the same process a week later. I just got back from Atlanta. John Benson did $100,000 in sales off of it. I mean, that one starting point has created over $1 million in revenue, and it's just because I thought it through. You think it through, and so it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It helps.
There's a guy by the name of Daniel Kellman, and he won the Nobel Prize, I think, in 2003. And it was really interesting because he's the only economist to ever win the Nobel Prize for economics. And what he won it for was his recognition that in the world, the people who really do things are fast thinkers. But the things that actually get things done right are slow thinking. So how many of you are fast thinkers? You really respond very, very quickly to situations. But if you're just always continually a fast thinker, you'll fast think this, and then you'll fast think that, and then you'll fast think this, and then you'll fast think this. But at the bottom of it, nothing really gets done really, really well. There's not the follow through. So what I've learned working with people who are probably clinically diagnosable as ADD is that if I can get them to say what it is that they really want, but then go through a 10, 15, 20-minute thinking process, they're combining both fast thinking and slow thinking. And the result is really dynamite. If you can get fast thinkers to think slow, at least for a short period of time, they produce dynamite results. And the reason is their natural tendency is to take action anyway, but then to actually think through whether it's worth taking action, and if they're going to take action, what are the results actually going to be, is really dynamite. So I think this. You had one more question. You somebody else.
I think it was a toss-up between these two because you raised your hands most. So
you got it.
You guys want to fight over it? Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is my first time to the group, so I should introduce myself or market myself. I'm Adrian. Actually, I thought we were gonna go out for chips and salsa. So I've gotten a lot. So
You still can.
I've
I don't know if anyone will
gotten
come
a
with
lot.
you.
I just moved here actually, but network marketing has recycled in my life over and over again. And I had a negative outcome in the past when I was younger, and I just wanted your take on network marketing.
You want me to go with that one, or you want to do?
You have more experience with it.
Look, I'm biased, okay, because there's a lot of great products and services that are sold through network marketing, and statistically, more millionaires, are created out of network marketing than almost any other, new startup venture. But at the same time, there is a massive number of people that, join network marketing companies under this belief that they're actually selling products and services, and what they're really selling is business opportunities because of the margins You're really not in the, so, and it has to be a consumable. You either have to pour it down the drain, down your throat, rub it on your body in order for it to be a good multi-level product, because people have to use the shit up, right? And so they buy more. And so the challenge I have with network marketing, not that it's not a good way to make money, most people just don't incorporate good direct response into it. So if you are going to get involved in a network marketing company, just use direct response so you're not in the human behavior business where you're trying to get other people to recruit. I have more of a, I would much rather write a sales letter and just sell something and create the stuff myself versus paying, a bigger, cutting off margins because someone's already labeled it and set up a website and done all that stuff. So it's one of those sorts of things. The biggest challenge I have with it, though, is the weirdness factor of network marketing. They don't call it network marketing because people already have a negative connotation, but the reason is because, if you get a really diehard, they're like fanatical, they're like true believers, right? Eric Hoffer's book. Where like everyone is all of a sudden a prospect to recruit. You can't sit next to them without them, hey, let me tell you about a new opportunity. So there's that weirdness sort of factor about it, but more than anything is it's really not a front end sort of product. If you're a chiropractor and you already have an existing client base, and you want to sell some multi-level vitamins, you already have a built-in client base. But if you don't already have an existing client base and just trying to make money just selling the products or services, because what will typically happen with the pitch is you can make a lot of money. Everybody needs this chemical, and you just talk to other people that need the chemical or need this vitamin or need this whatever. The challenge is you're not selling, you're selling business opportunities. You're inventory loading people, and the product is about as important in a network marketing company as a strip pole is in a strip club. It's just there to facilitate selling biz ops. Does that make sense? Okay, so really, I don't know any. I could have spent 5 more minutes trying to have a softer way, but that's it. And so, having said that, I would much rather be the owner of a multi-level company versus one of the people in the downline. But you can build a tremendous business, and there are lots of multi-level companies that sell stuff, and if you are a good marketer, you can kick ass and take names. And what I would do if you are going to go into a multi-level company is use direct response in order to recruit robotically a downline, and then let them go out and annoy all their friends and relatives. It's probably not the answer you wanted, but I will tell you this. One of the greatest ways that people can become good marketers is get enrolled in either some sort of direct selling environment. Because if you have to go out and sell Kirby vacuums, if you have to go out and pitch people on multi-level, that teaches you something you are not going to learn any other way. And so, there's pros and cons to everything. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll do your question real quick if you got one.
Yeah, I understand this could launch a whole podcast by itself, but we talked earlier about how an entrepreneur or a small business owner can just be the person that is the motor. So what are the safeguards that you need to undergo initially as a startup to try to work against that and not let that happen?
So it was where, I think it was along the lines that the business only exists if the owner is there. Is that what you were basically saying? Well, from my standpoint, like I made a conscious decision back in the 1980s that it wasn't going to be Dan Sullivan. The company wasn't going to be Dan Sullivan. So we called it Strategic Coach. And the reason is that down the road, I wanted to have a much greater impact on the world, and we couldn't do it. I mean, you can go the Tony Robbins route. Tony is the product, but that's why he needs 5,000 people with the butts in the seat on a weekend. And if Tony's not there, they don't get the butts in the seat. So I've got clients who've been in Strategic Coach for 15 years, and I've never met them. They've signed up for 15 years. I mean, Kathy, I met Kathy, she signed up for the program. And the reason is that I wanted the entity and the message to be bigger than Dan Sullivan. And it wasn't about being close to Dan Sullivan and being inspired by Dan Sullivan. It was a way of thinking. It was like one of the tools that we just showed you. You master these tools. And guess what? The tools work whether you ever meet Dan Sullivan or not, or you've even heard about Dan Sullivan, the tools work. So I'm just interested in creating all sorts of stuff that work independently of me out in the world, and I get other people involved. So that's the real value creation proposition. The number one thing you have to do with your business is make sure the value creation proposition doesn't demand your presence.
And we did an episode on I Love Marketing on, Dean talks about tiger-proof your business, because Dean Jackson had read an article, I don't know if it was in Fortune or Forbes years ago, and it was about the highest paid entertainers in... All right, Kim, you need to quit talking to him. I'm trying to answer this question. What do you guys think? Since I know you, I can blame you. It could have been his fault.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, what's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew, okay. Andrew. Yeah, so Dean Jackson, my partner on I Love Marketing, it's horrible. It feels like you're being scolded at school at a free freaking meeting. But anyway, Dean was he read this article, and he had read at the time that at the Mirage, Siegfried and Roy had made $28 million that year doing their show, and they took, I think, 6 weeks off a year, but they did like 5 shows a week, or maybe even more than that, and they had 160 employees, and blah blah blah. And then he read a little further, and the Blue Man Group that same year had made $68 million in revenue, and it was actually and he wrote up a whole newsletter about, people don't go to the Blue Man Group to see, they go to see blue men. They don't, when they go to Siegfried and Roy, they don't go to see 2 guys and a tiger. They go to see Siegfried and Roy. And he said that, the problem is that the Blue Man Group, when they started, there's only 3 of them in the original show, but there were 4 people that started because they all have part-time jobs, and in case one of them couldn't be there, they had to sit in, and they just put makeup on, and they do their. How many of you ever seen the Blue Man Group? I think it's fantastic. Try it on acid; it's great. You might want to edit that out. People may take it seriously. So anyway, but basically. What happened, so he writes this newsletter about tiger-proof your business, because if something ever happens to Siegfried and Roy, what happens to that? The Blue Man Group is totally leverageable, and the only time that the Blue Man, the original founders, ever performed was when they were on the Emmys awards or commercials. Other than that, there was something like 60 other Blue Men that knew how to do the moves. And so a month later, after he wrote that newsletter, Roy got mauled by a tiger, and all of a sudden the $28 million a year business gone, 160 employees lost their jobs, the Mirage Hotel drops in hotel stays, literally gone. And it was the creepiest thing that he wrote that whole newsletter about tiger-proof your business. So the point is, think of it that way. What I will say is, when you're starting out though, you're going to need cash flow to fund whatever business you're in. So some people get so mired in how you have to set it up right, I have to set it up right, when I'm like, just get out and sell something. Go out and start making some money, and work it out as you go along.
So what I'm hearing you saying is duplicate yourself, so you don't always have to be in that seat.
Right. Think about marketing. What is, the best way that I've leveraged myself is I've never had to hire salespeople. Not that I don't have people to do sales, but marketing, the best sales, if I had to rely on face-to-face selling in order to do what it is that I do, who knows what I'd be doing? I'd probably be broke, because I'm so distractible. But when I can replicate a free recorded message that can marketing is the ultimate leverage. It really is. If you write a sales letter, you've duplicated yourself. If you put together a killer video sales letter, a free recorded message, a great website, a great opt-in process, an autoresponder series that communicates, that is the ultimate way to duplicate and replicate yourself. And there are certain things in my business, like 25K, if I got hit by a truck, 25K wouldn't exist. There's other aspects of my business that would continue on without me. But as far as I'm concerned, if I get hit by a truck, I get hit by a truck. So if my business is, whatever. So a lot of these are much deeper questions. But I would say the best place to start replicating and leveraging yourself is the marketing. In a lot of ways, I would say that's what Dan did with Strategic Coach. Dan has lots of books that are out there. Dan has other coaches, but what he did is he created processes, and other people can run those processes. And so whatever process you have that leads people to get to a bigger future, replicate that, and the way that you sell the process is through marketing. Great products, great services, great marketing. You know, marketing is what you say and who you say it to, and the more that you effectively build that, the better. So we need to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. What I'd like to do is speak to these two knowledge products. These are not just little books; they're actually a CD recording, and it's really well packaged. What I really love about Strategic Coaches, they have really nice stuff, and so this is the gratitude principle, and this is two things that Dan says are the most important. And it's funny how you're right here and I'm talking about, here's what Dan says. One of the things I really did you get that on video too? So many good clips here. These are like sound bites. All right. The two things to protect as an entrepreneur that are really important are confidence and gratitude. That's what I've learned a lot from Dan. And you don't do anything well in life if you don't have confidence, or if you're just lucky, because some people can bumble their way through and be scared shitless and still do well. However, if you really want to put the odds in your favor, build and grow your confidence. Hopefully with I Love Marketing, we give you confidence in the area of marketing so you become more effective at it. So one of the things that Dan is brilliant at is helping entrepreneurs be more confident in all areas important to their entrepreneurial and personal lives. And so confidence is one, and the other is gratitude, because you can have all the money, all the relationships in the world, but if you don't have gratitude, then you can be a miserable human being. And so confidence and gratitude are critically important. And this is one of my favorite recordings from Dan. It's called The Gratitude Principle. And how many of you in the room are like, and I would consider myself in this sort of like self-help, personal development seminar junkies? Okay, one of the things, he says something in there, he talks about it, where he says you can read all of the books on happiness, and you can understand all of the things that make somebody unhappy. It doesn't automatically make you happy. You know, it's an internal thing that you develop. And the Dalai Lama said in The Art of Happiness that happiness is a skill. You can develop it. And so the gratitude principle isn't just ideas. He actually gives you a process on how to create more gratitude. Is there anything you would like to say about this?
Well, the usual attitude towards gratitude is that the whole action has to be initiated by someone else. In other words, they do something for you and then you're grateful. And first of all, that makes you very reactive. But not only that, you're sitting there waiting for people to do good things for you so that you can be grateful. And there's an interesting word that goes along with gratitude, and it's appreciation. And appreciation really has two meanings in our language. And one appreciation is sort of related to that you're grateful, you appreciate, and you're grateful. But the other one has to do with economics, which means to increase the value of. So when gold appreciates and when stocks appreciate, what it means is that the value has gone up. Okay. So what I did is that I took the meaning that appreciation increased the value of, so that you can be proactively grateful. In other words, you can just look at something and you can sit there and you can just appreciate it. And it doesn't have anything to do with what it's done for you. You just appreciate it for what it was, and it increases the value in your mind. And there's a wonderful book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. How many of you have read it? Yeah. So he spent 5 years in 2 Nazi death camps, essentially, death camps. And he survived, and he lost his wife, and he lost his members of his family. And he realized that what he had to do to combat what the Nazis were trying to do, first of all, they would destroy you as a human being, so that you no longer felt like a human being, and then they would just destroy your body. But the first thing they wanted to do was break your will and just destroy you as a human being. So there were a number of things that he did every day while he was in Auschwitz, and one of them is that he could see outside the window across, and there was a particular tree on a hill, and every day he would look at it and he said, God, that's a beautiful tree, and then he would follow it throughout the seasons. He was there for 5 years, so he would appreciate it in spring, summer, fall, and winter. And so he realized that there were a number of things that he had to do every day so the Nazis couldn't defeat him. And one of them is he had to be very thankful for something. And so he had to pick out something every day that he was really grateful about. Second thing is he had to find something funny every day. Now you can imagine it's probably the toughest circumstances that human beings have ever been to find something humorous. And the third thing is he had to do something that helped somebody that day. But you have to appreciate that in all three cases, those abilities were coming from within him. They were not being generated by the circumstances. So the Nazis were in control of the circumstances, but he was in control of his responses. So the more grateful you are, the more you can just look at the world around you, and you can assign greater and greater value to everything around you. Just there's a happiness factor that comes out. You just live in a world of appreciation and factors. So that's the and I just see that, like, people live with incredible wealth, they live with incredible advantages, and they're complaining. They have no appreciation, they have no gratitude, you know, and nothing will make them happy because it's not starting from the inside. Yeah, so that's
Awesome.
that one.
Yep, so that's gratitude principle, and the other is the gap. I'll let you do the...
Yeah. So I'll give you the short version of this, and then you can listen to the longer version of this. How many of you remember a time when you were a kid and you went outside, and one day you noticed that there was a place where the sky and the ground met? How many of you know that there was a day when you noticed that? How many of you probably know? I mean, yeah. And we call that the horizon. Okay, so how many of you didn't take you too long to come to the realization that you couldn't get to the horizon? How many of you actually recognize that you couldn't get there? Okay, is there anyone who still bears deep emotional scars because you haven't been able to get to the horizon? Okay, so the horizon is actually what I call a mental structure. It's a structure in our brains, and it's learned because children who are born blind, when they regain their sight, don't have that. They don't have three dimensions. Three-dimensionality is actually a learned skill. They just have shapes. And then gradually their eyes begin to see depth, and then at a certain point they learn this. And one of the things that the horizon line does is it allows us to orient ourselves in relationship to space. Space is one of our major dimensions, and this is the thing that allows us to actually orient ourselves to space. And you don't get any satisfaction out of the horizon. The only satisfaction you get is using the horizon to plot where you're going, but then turn around and see where you came from. And all the satisfaction comes from seeing where you came from. There's no emotional satisfaction because you're never going to get any closer to the horizon. Yeah, do it at night, doesn't matter, you can't get there. Do it fast, you can't get there, everything. We have the exact corresponding mental structure in our brains. It works exactly the same way, but it's in relationship to time. So we live in space and we live in time. And the time one, that's the exact correspondent to the horizon, is called the ideal. And whereas people don't have any emotional trouble at all with the horizon, they've got an enormous amount of emotional problems with the ideal, because they actually believe that they can get to the ideal, but you can no more get to the ideal than you can get to the horizon. And so the difference between you and the ideal is called the gap. So I call that the gap. And if you measure yourself by the ideal, you're always in the gap. And what the being in the gap means, you're always dissatisfied, you're always disappointed, you're always depressed, you will never get there. And people commit suicide over this. People take drugs over this. They can't get to the ideal. They can be incredible super performers. They can be the greatest performer in the world. They can win prizes. They can be declared greatest this or that. But inside of themselves, they have no satisfaction because nothing they achieved actually matches up with the ideal. Because in the same way that the horizon moves away from us, the ideal also moves away from us. And the only purpose we have the ideal for is so that we can set goals in the foreground. And then as we move towards the goals, we look backwards and see where we came from. The only happiness comes from measuring backwards. There is no happiness in measuring forwards. That's the gap.
So if your future happiness has any semblance of importance, you might want to pick up the CD. What did you guys think of Dan?
Yeah.
Paul, how much are these?
Not in
Just name a price, Paul.
They're 24 each.
They're 24 each?
Okay.
Okay.
So 1 for 24, 2 for 50.
Yeah. So they're like $24.95, I think, right? Or are they
Yeah.
24 each?
And you get a
25
free
bucks
I
each.
Love Marketing sticker. 2 of them if you buy that.
All right, here's the deal. I just want to get Dan's wisdom and ideas into everyone's head. I mean, we don't like, if I was trying to make money out of the group here, I'd be pitching you guys like multi-$100 programs, and believe me, I know how to pitch multi-$100 programs. Yeah, we'll have, and if you do want one, if not, we take cash or credit cards. All right, so we have a few of them up there. And what I'd like all of you to do, if you would be so kind, is please give your feedback on the I Love Marketing Meetup site, and also at ilovemarketing.com. That would be wonderful. There's a great interview that me and Dean Jackson did with Dan Sullivan on I Love Marketing. If you go to ilovemarketing.com, all you need to do is type in Dan Sullivan, and you will find the video there, and I think go ahead and watch that. Just like to get some positive focus takeaways of tonight's meeting, and then we will call it a wrap. Yes?
So I started in junior achievement when I was 2 years younger than I was allowed to be, but because my mother was one of the sponsoring companies, she worked at a company that did the sponsorship. So I started in, I think, 8th grade, and I had to study all about entrepreneurs and learn the whole system of creating a business and running a business and selling a business and go through that process. I was best in sales every year that I was in it, every quarter that I was in it, and so I won a trip. Anyway, knowing the definition, it wasn't until a year ago that I went to your talk, and so my business partner is, as you guys talked about him a little bit, but he was the creator of Z Health. And while I created alongside of him, it wasn't until a year ago that I went and you were talking about entrepreneurs, and everybody in the room was talking about entrepreneurs, and I went, well, I'm not sure I should sign up for coach because I'm not sure I'm an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until tonight when you said the definition again that I heard, because the only reason I joined last year is because I said, well, I'm not sure I'm an entrepreneur. And Marilyn walked up to me and she went, yes, you are. And then she explained to me why, but all I needed was the yes, you are. But it wasn't until tonight, a year later, after being in the program, that I heard the definition that I learned a long time ago. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was impressed when he talked about the breakout that's coming. How we're in the extra civil war, and people are really looking for leaders.
Yeah.
And if you can bring the passion that you have for leading and not limiting, which is what everybody else is doing, you feel that negative energy in our world right now, and especially our country, is everybody's just limiting. And if you can break through that and you can be the one that's on the forefront of that, then you can be the leader and you can show people a new way out.
That's right.
Thank you for the steps.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes. Oh, we also have some of my interviews. We'll give. I have an interview with Dan too. That anyone that gets one of these, we'll give you one of those interviews. And anyone else?
I didn't realize that the Chinese didn't have indoor plumbing.
I heard a real description about the United States. The United States has about 309 million people. And there's 309 million people in China that sort of correspond to the 309 million in the United States. And then there's 1 billion peasants. And
We have that too, but
and
we
they
keep
live
south of
they live
Mexico.
on basically about $1, $1 a day and everything like that. So they have they're kind of like where the United States was around 1850 as a country.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing is that the statistics about China growing, all the statistics are coming from a communist government. And I never believe a single figure that comes out of a communist government. United States, all the figures are checked by 1,500 different sources and independent organizations. It's not possible to lie about the U.S. economy. There's a bottom line that everybody knows about. But a country that controls all of its own figures and does all of its own counting. I mean, you wouldn't do that if somebody, you didn't, I mean, you were working with someone, but you never got to check the books. Yeah. The other thing is that their GDP is based on production and our GDP is based on sales.
Got you.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
I actually went to St. John's as well, and it really changed.
Where'd you go, Santa Fe or
Santa Fe, yeah.
Santa Fe.
And it really changed the course of my life. And
That was like the leisure campus we always considered.
we did manage to crack a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was mostly Play-Doh and pot.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But it was. It's a very unique structure.
It was, and it really changed the course of my life. And I just, I think it's great to acknowledge how much of an impact it had, and the idea that really, it all starts with a great idea. It's not just, that institution, it's any. And if you're really, starting with a fantastic idea and letting it build from there, it can have profound impacts on people's lives. It's not just lip service, but, really changes the way they are as human beings.
Yeah, thanks.
Glad to have another St. Johnny who's an entrepreneur.
All right, anyone else? Any final comment?
Be sold. Be sold on yourself. Be certain. Be committed to the sale.
Yeah.
Then you're not really selling. You're sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And empowering.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. For every, my feeling is that you should have an equation like for every 5 minutes that you spend selling to other people, you should spend 5 minutes selling to yourself. Okay? And every time you sell yourself, you'll get a multiplier on the other side. It's the selling yourself that's actually the key to your selling others.
Yeah, Thomas Edison had that thing where he's like, if I had, an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes on coming up with the right questions and 5 minutes on the answers. And so part of it is asking yourself those questions.
It seems like accountability and attention management are what we need because we have a lot of work to do before next year.
Yeah. 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 Anyway.
Dan, thank you.
Yeah,
pleasure. Thank you.
How about that, guys?
If anyone would like any information on Dan's program, the Strategic Coach, just go to strategiccoach.com. I would encourage you to, have them send you information about the program. If you make over $100,000 a year net income, that's the minimum requirement. And it would be really good for.
Yeah, and just get on our list because we send out a lot of great stuff. We're great believers in moving the free line. Evan Pagan's great line of moving the free line. So we're always sending out stuff that's just useful. So just get on our list.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And I'd like to, of course, acknowledge Kevin and my team and all who actually worked all day and are still here tonight. And we've got 2 days of 25K, so my team is working their butts off. And they're still here working, so I just want to acknowledge them. Thank you, guys. If any of you need any video production, my friend Dave Katz here. If you need any bio videos, any testimonial videos, or whatever, his company's called Bullseye Video. What's your website?
Bullseyevideo.com.
Bullseyevideo.com. Photography, video. If any of you want to do anything from a guy who's hung around a lot of marketing seminars and stuff, he can put together lots of different ways that you can replicate yourself in video. And I encourage all of you to get to know and meet each other and come to whatever meetup groups you can. And if you live really far away, start your own, because we have a whole curriculum at ilovemarketing.com that actually helps you lay out an I Love Marketing meeting and continue to have discussions, because this is how we all learn and grow. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time. Adios.